And we are now live. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to this live stream with me, Peter Sweden, and my special guest today, Gustav Kasselstrand from Alternativ för Sverige, Alternativ for Sweden, a new political party in Sweden. And thank you so much for being here, Gustav.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's nice to be here again.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on. So we are talking about the EU elections that are coming up now, and you have been, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are the only political party that is wanting Sweden to leave the EU. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct, at least compared to the parties already established in the Swedish parliament. So compared to them, we're the only party who wants a Swexit. And it didn't used to be this way because the left-wing party, as well as the Sweden Democrats, wanted to leave the European Union, but they changed their mind last year. So now after they've changed their mind, we're the only party who wants to leave the European Union. And of course, there's some other parties, smaller parties than Alternative for Sweden, who wants a Swexit. But compared to the established parties, we're the only party who actively wants to have a Swexit. So it's an interesting election campaign for us, since we have a monopoly situation here in this question. So we really emphasize the fact that we are the only party who wants this Swexit.
Excellent. Yeah, what do you think about the whole Brexit thing, by the way, just before we get into all that stuff? Because there's been a lot of the UK voted to leave the EU, but then it's just been complete chaos over there. Do you think, is that because of the Brexit stuff, or is that because of all uncertainty? What do you think?
First and foremost, I just want to say that Brexit is one of the biggest events that I've ever experienced in my life. And it's probably going to be one of the biggest events for our whole lives that we will ever have experienced. It's a real game changer in European politics, in world politics. It's one of these times when the people win against the establishment. So obviously this is a really big thing, and it's so much more than just the EU question. It's really the payback time for the people against the politicians who have betrayed their people for too long. And it's obvious that the politicians do not want Brexit. They didn't want Brexit. They will never want Brexit. So that's why they are trying to delay this process, and they are trying to make it become as problematic and chaotic as possible. They have the support from the European Union. I mean, the British establishment has the support from the European Union to create this very complicated question and this complicated process. So that's why it has been delayed. And I think that the European Union, they do not want other countries to join Britain, to join the United Kingdom in this path to independence. So they are trying to make other European countries afraid of taking the same action as the British did. So that's why they are creating this chaos, because they know that if they will have a trend of more and more countries going into this anti-EU direction, the EU is dead forever. And that's why they are creating this mess. So I totally support Brexit. I've supported it from day one and way before that, and I will continue to support Brexit. And I will never let the chaos that the European Union with the British establishment, the chaos that they create, be an argument against Brexit. It's rather the opposite. If they create chaos or try to sabotage this process, it's even one more argument for Brexit, that this is how they do, this is how they treat democracy, because it was a democratic decision. The people voted, it was very clear, out of the European Union, and this is how they treat the British people. So they show a total lack of democracy, and I think we really should support the British people.
It's quite authoritarian, and they're trying to punish Britain for daring to vote leave, for daring trying to get out of the EU, out of the club, basically. At least that's what it seems like, at least.
Yeah, I think so. And of course, there is a problem when the politicians who actually want Remain, when they are the ones who are going to negotiate about the Brexit process, obviously there's going to be trouble, and it would have been better if the politicians also wanted Brexit. Then you would have had tougher politicians who were tougher on the negotiations, but they do not have that, and obviously it's a question of the political class who do not really want this process. But again, I've never seen this as an argument against Brexit. I think we should continue on this epic event. It was a cataclysmic event in 2016, and I don't know if it's going to happen in a month or a year or whenever it's going to happen, but I am very sure that Brexit will indeed happen. I cannot just say exactly when.
Yeah, we have to wait and see how the British sort that out, I guess. I mean, you're a relatively new party in Sweden. You stood in the parliamentary elections last year. How has the public reception been to your party since? And you know, you've been doing the EU campaign now and all of this. How has the public reception been to your message?
I think it's been quite good actually, and some people might ask me, yeah, but why did you just gain 20,000 votes instead of 200,000? But I truly believe that a lot of Swedes support our party, and they might have voted for the Sweden Democrats, the party where we have our roots. So they might have voted for that party, but I think they have a big sympathy for Alternative for Sweden. But politics show that a lot of people have a loyalty to their party, and they identify very, very firmly with their political party, and they might not want to switch party, even though their first party has abandoned a lot of their important questions. So I think this election we will have many people who voted for the Sweden Democrats or some other party who now instead will vote for Alternative for Sweden. So I still feel that we have a big support, and I am truly sure that we indeed have the future for us.
Yes, because you come from the Swedish Democrat. You were the previous youth party for the Swedish Democrats, correct?
That's correct. I was the chairman for the youth wing for 4 or 5 years, and yeah, I was active in the Sweden Democrats for almost 10 years in total. So obviously, I have a strong background in the party, and I've seen the party change throughout the years. I still have many friends in the Sweden Democrats. I do not believe the Sweden Democrats are the future for Sweden. I do not think they are a good opposition party. Obviously, they're better than nothing, but I cannot really say that I longer trust the Sweden Democrats. I do not think they have the capacity to change Sweden for the better.
Yeah, it seems like the Swedish Democrats have gone a little bit more moderate the last few years. They previously were more against the EU, but they seem to be more pro-EU now than they were before. That's my impression, at least. And there's been some... I haven't been following all of it, but I saw there was some woman, I believe, from the Swedish Democrats who got into some trouble because of some EU statements here just recently.
Yeah.
So
It's been a lot of chaos this day in the Sweden Democrats, and I'm not going to dig into the details there. I can just say that it's a party where a lot of people are actually in some kind of civil war with each other, and there's a lot of mess going on in the party. I think they have a really bad culture, really bad internal culture in the party, which makes a lot of people stab each other's backs and betray each other. So I feel that the old strong culture that we had back in the days when the Sweden Democrats were about to join the Swedish Parliament, those days are gone. It's a completely new party now, and they have abandoned a lot of their important questions. The European Union withdrawal is one of those questions. The Swexit, that was a strong question for the Sweden Democrats for many, many years. They just abandoned that question last year and said that we're no longer a Swexit party. So it's a party that's changing. And since we launched Alternative for Sweden 1 year ago, I have never really doubted or been reluctant towards what I have been doing. I've never really felt that the Sweden Democrats are indeed a good enough party. I just felt more and more that this was the right thing to do, because the Sweden Democrats, at least in my point of view, is not the party that will save Sweden. And still, they are a bigger party. They have had tremendous success. Many of them are good people, not saying anything about that, but I do not think they will come much longer now. And yes, it's true that Alternative for Sweden is a very small party compared to the Sweden Democrats. But I do think that we will be growing going forward.
The thing is, in the EU elections, it's often smaller parties that can do quite well in the EU elections as well. I mean, look at the last time it was the feminist party in Sweden. They did much better in the EU elections compared to the parliamentary elections. And and I remember, I think when I was little, like 10 years back or something, we had a pirate party in Sweden that got a lot of votes as well. But they got nothing in the parliament, but they got a lot in the EU elections.
Yeah. Pirate party. We had another party called the List of June, the Junilistan.
Yes, I remember them.
That also had success in the European election. So at least historically, we can see that Swedes can vote for new parties in the European elections because they do not feel that it's as important as the parliamentary elections. So you're more keen on actually voting for a new party. We do not know how it will be this time for Alternative for Sweden. I mean, if we would get a place in the European Parliament, it would be big news. Obviously, it would be a real... I mean, I do not think many people expect it, but we will see how far it gets and how much success we can do in this election. I keep saying this election campaign that we're doing our very best. We have the best politics. We'll see how much we can achieve. But irrespective of the percentage we get, as long as we feel that we did our best possible election campaign, then we have done what we have been able to.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how it goes, and in the very least, you're starting a discussion in Sweden about leaving the EU, which wouldn't have happened otherwise. So it's really good to see that happening, and new ideas coming in and so on. I understand there was some complications when you launched the election campaign. However, it was a few months back now, I think, but you were denied a place to rent to have your kickoff, if I remember correctly, in Sweden. Can you tell what happened there?
Yeah, we considered having our election campaign kickoff event in Sweden, somewhere in Sweden. We tried to book venues in Stockholm, Gothenburg, Malmö, wherever. And every time we came in touch with a hotel or conference center or whatever, they would first be very positive and say that, yes, our facilities are available and we're happy to have you as our guests. And then when they found out that it's Alternative for Sweden and Alternative for Sweden are having the election start, they would suddenly be, unfortunately, we have a double booking here and you cannot have this place. And I would ask them, okay, can we have it the next weekend? No, it's booked there as well. Okay, any weekend? No, it's booked all the time. So usually they do not say straight out that it's got to do with politics, but they are just fully booked all the time. Always fully booked when we try to book a venue. And sometimes they will actually say that we're not going to host you because of security issues or blah, blah, blah. And usually there's never any problems. I mean, we haven't really had any big demonstrations against our conferences or internal campaign starts, but they will use any argument not to host Alternative for Sweden. I've heard everything throughout the years. So we decided to have our campaign start in Copenhagen instead. And it started out better there. They were more keen on having us, and I informed them that we were Alternative for Sweden. And they said, yeah, but in Denmark we do not care about politics in that way. I mean, we will let everyone rent our facilities. Doesn't matter what opinion you have. And they would also inform me that they had Danish anti-immigration parties like Danish People's Party to rent venue there. So they say it's not a problem. But still in Denmark, we got almost the same problem as in Sweden in the end, because when left-wing extremists found out that we had rent the place, they would start a massive campaign against the hotel, and they would call them hundreds of calls and send them thousands of mails and go to the media and tell them that Alternative for Sweden is having this place. And they would be full of lies and call us neo-Nazis or extremists or whatever, lies that are not true. And then the hotel would get some kind of panic and feel that, yeah, this is bad for the business. So actually we were denied the place where we already had a booking in Denmark. They said that, yeah, we have to cancel this event because we're afraid about the security issue. So it was very weak by the hotel, but we managed to get a new place in Denmark. But I can just summarize everything that, yes, Sweden is still the North Korea of the Nordics. I still think that Denmark and the other Nordic countries are much better than Sweden, but they also have the same problem to a large extent, that left-wing extremists are trying, and in many cases also managing to rig the whole democracy, or trying to threaten different hotels or whatever it may be, to deny us the right to have a conference. So obviously it's a big threat for the democratic system that we have in our countries, and Sweden is not alone. It's a big problem all over Europe.
So it seems the far left extremists, they are not very democratic. They are trying to shut down their opposition.
Yeah, I mean, they hate democracy. They have always hated democracy.
They claim to love democracy, but
yeah, I mean,
they seem a bit hypocritical.
Isn't it fun that you and I, Peter, we are always a threat towards democracy. We are the anti-democrats, and still we are the ones who are open towards having a discussion like this. We're open towards other people's opinions. We are not afraid about freedom of speech. We just welcome discussions. When I've been around on this tour all over Sweden, we have had open events where we invite everyone to come and ask us questions. We have had open events, and we even actively invite people. If you're not a supporter of Alternative for Sweden, feel free to come to us and ask questions, take the discussion with us, and this is exactly what we need in Sweden, an open discussion. So maybe Alternative for Sweden can be pioneers in this way, but they do not want to come there. So the left-wing extremists, even when they are invited, they refuse to come to any civilized place to have a discussion, and still they call me and you and everyone else who are anti-immigration or patriotic, we are always the anti-democrats. So
it's quite funny how that works.
Yeah, I haven't really followed it, but maybe someone can explain to me.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like I saw this video the other day from I think it was from the 50s. It was an American guy who was reading out a information book from communist headquarters that were used by the communists in America at the time, and the guide that they gave them, the communists there, was to call their opposition Nazis and anti-Semitic and racist and all of that stuff, to try and smear their opponents. And if they say it long enough, then people will eventually take it as true. And they would use that tactic, I guess, and they would use the guys as anti-fascist organizations to smear their opponents. And this was actually, and this isn't a secret, this was something that was actually being used by the communists back in the 50s in the US.
That's interesting. It's more than 50, 60, even 70 years ago that many of these ideas emanates from. So it's nothing new. It's been used all the time, the control of the language. Because if you control the language, you also control people's thoughts, and then you control the actions of the people. So it's interesting to see and hear what you're saying, because I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's what they are doing now, and that's what they're going to continue to do. They're trying to smear their opponents, and
Yeah,
Just you just have to say no, you're wrong. This is not
yeah,
true, and then ignore them.
yeah, yeah,
Don't let them ruin your life. Don't let them control the narrative. That's what you have to do.
yeah. I have been thinking a lot about this question since I was involved in politics, because there's different ideas on how you tackle the accusation of being an extremist or racist. And during the first years, I would perhaps more argue against it, but nowadays I just don't care about it, because I know it's just a weapon that the left-wing extremists use, and the effect of the weapon or the power of the weapon is actually being milder or nothing at all if you don't care about it. So sometimes you can laugh about it, sometimes you can just don't not care at all. So there's different ways to tackle it, and the last few years I've had this strategy not to care at all or even just laugh about it, because I think that they usually await some kind of reaction, and they usually think that they can provoke a
Yeah,
reaction from you, and I actually think that if you get very angry about it and very upset, then people might think that yeah, there was some right in it, but that's why I currently am in the phase of just joking around with it.
yeah, yeah. No, you just have to ignore it and move on. I
Yeah,
got a question here from the chat, by the way,
yeah.
from a super chat here, asking if you get into the EU Parliament, which group will you join, or if any?
We would definitely try to join the new group, which is now being established by Matteo Salvini from Lega and Marine Le Pen from Rassemblement National, together with the True Finns and the Danish People's Party and the Alternative for Germany. So I think that we would be very welcome to this group. I was in Tallinn in Estonia earlier this week, and I visited an event which was hosted by EKRE, the Estonian National Conservative governing party. We have very good contact with them, and there was also Marine Le Pen. So I personally met Marine Le Pen, and I spoke with her. So she said that the Alternative for Sweden is very welcome in this group, because they do not have any Swedish partner to cooperate with, and they want a Swedish partner. They want a Swedish political party to join this group, this larger ENF group, or whatever you should call it. So I think that if we get a place in the European Parliament, we will be in this group in very short notice. And I mean, I've had a good relation and a good contact with all these parties throughout the years, so we already know each other, even since the time I was the SDU chairman. I mean, the chairman of the Sweden Democratic Youth. Even since that time, I have been in touch with all these parties. So I think that that's a no-brainer for us to join this group.
Okay, yeah, no, that sounds exciting. And
Yeah,
you met with Marine Le Pen. How was she? Was she nice?
yeah, she's a fantastic woman. She's charismatic. She's very strong. She's very good at presenting her ideas. So she's a strong, charismatic woman. She's exactly the opposite of the feminists in Sweden. They never have any good to say about Marine Le Pen. They never say it's time for France to have a female president. Now it's time for Marine Le Pen.
That's
But they
funny.
always use this argument
It was time
to support Hillary.
it was time for Hillary to get the US to
Yeah,
get a female
yeah,
president, but France, no,
exactly.
no, no,
No,
no,
in
not
France
the
they
not
support
the.
Macron. So yeah, it's
Almost like they don't care about the woman. It's just politics.
yeah, it's fun to see the hypocrites they are. But I mean, she's a strong woman. She's one of the strongest women in European politics, and she has really shown that she has the power to continue throughout the years, even though she had a lot of resistance from the establishment and the media. She continued because she had a passion and a vision to fight for the French people. And I mean, in Sweden we have Annie Lööf, a female party leader, and there's nothing strong about her. I mean, she's been uplifted by the Swedish establishment. She has all the time to be in the media. They love her. She's created by the media. She's a product by the Swedish establishment. And the feminists think, oh, Annie is so strong. But there's nothing strong about her. She just
Isn't
takes
she?
the position that is accepted by the establishment, and then she gets all the applause and all the celebrations and
Isn't she the one that was going to Bilderberg and Trilateral Commission and all that good stuff?
yeah. Bilderberg Trilateral Commission. She's visited all these globalist meetings. She even said that George Soros was a big inspiration for her and one of the most important and prominent persons that she could ever think of. So, but she just says what is right from the establishment's point of view. I do not think she has many own ideas, but she knows exactly how to say something so that the Swedish establishment will be happy. And she gets all the publicity, but there's nothing strong about her. If you talk about strong women, then you should talk about Marine Le Pen instead. But she never gets any celebrations by the Swedish feminists. But I can just say that I'm very happy I met her. Obviously, I've had good contact with her party for many years, but I never met her personally. And I think she is a strong politician and a strong woman. So not that I care much about she being a woman or someone being a man. I mean, that's not very important for me. But but still, if you get into these kind of discussions about strong women, then why is she never even mentioned by the so-called women fighters?
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, there's people in I'm currently in Norway right now, and over here they have Sylvi Listhaug.
Yeah.
Have you heard of her? She's actually from 30 minutes away from where I live. Live here right now. So
Really? She was the one who was about to travel to Sweden to study the immigration failure in Rinkeby, how they are not going to do in Norway, right?
Yeah, I went to a meeting with her actually, and she was talking about that when she went to Sweden, and talking about the Swedish conditions and how they did not want that in Norway, and she was talking about it really openly at a public meeting here, just 30 minutes away from here, and she was talking about how instead of taking refugees to Norway, she wanted to help them in Africa instead. That's going to be a lot more cost effective, and she was even talking a bit controversial things.
Really?
It would be considered controversial by the left. She wanted to be looking into birth control for Africa to stop. So there wouldn't be as many people coming over to Europe. She was actually talking about that.
Really?
And she's a mainstream politician in Norway.
Yeah, that's great. But is that why she also got into some controversy? Because as I understood, she was getting a lot of resistance from the establishment. Is that correct?
Yeah, she has been. Yeah, she stepped. Apologies. I was sick here this weekend, so I lost my voice. Apologies for that.
We hear you.
Yeah, she lost her minister post briefly for some time. I haven't been following it 100%, but I believe she's making a comeback now just recently, and that was because she said, oh, I don't remember exactly what she said. She said something to some socialists about them supporting communism or something along that line. I don't remember exactly. Don't quote me on this, but she said something to some of the socialists or communists in Norway, something to them that they didn't like, so they got her fired.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because sometimes when people get into controversy, it's the establishment who has decided that we're trying to make these people leave, this person get out of politics. And you've seen it this week with Heinz Christian Strache from FPÖ. Probably the establishment of Austria has tried to get rid of Heinz Christian Strache with a very brutal secret recording of Heinz Christian Strache, where they record everything he says and then they release it, not directly, but 2 years later when they need to release it, just before the European elections, just days before this big meeting that Salvini had in Milano. So it's interesting to see what powers we are fighting, because this is not fair play. We are fighting a very corrupt establishment on a global level, even European level, and on a national level. And they are obviously willing to fiddle in the political process, and in different ways meddle about what's gonna happen in politics, and get rid of different politicians when they don't like them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Austria, how they vote now, if they're going to vote for FPÖ again, or if they're going to vote for Sebastian Kurz. It's going to be very interesting to see.
I actually think many of them will stay true to FPÖ. I do not think many of their own supporters thought that this was a really big deal. But that's just my thoughts.
Someone in the chat, by the way, just told me the reason Sylvie was fired from a minister post last year was because she called some of the guys in the Socialist Party, the Labour Party, that they were protecting terrorists, she said, on Facebook. That's what she got fired for.
But it's true, so...
Well, that wasn't allowed, apparently.
Yeah. They welcome terrorists all the time, so it's just a fact.
It's very interesting how they can just make someone get fired for just saying something like that. Anyway, I just saw, by the way, that your how has the media coverage been of your party? Because I saw that TV4 decided to refuse to air your advertisements. Isn't this election meddling?
Yeah, obviously they're meddling in the election, and now it's media who meddles. So TV4 is now even owned by the state, because Telia bought the whole TV4, and Telia is owned by the state. But anyway, TV4 is the only TV channel in Sweden who has the right to broadcast public ads from political parties. So you cannot go to any other channel in Sweden and say that we want to broadcast our advertisement. So TV4 has some kind of monopoly situation, and they allow all political parties to send ads, but not Alternative for Sweden. So obviously they're trying to silence us, and we were actually almost having a deal with them. Everything had gone quite nice, and we were expecting a quite large campaign through them, but then they refused us to do this in the very last second. So they are trying to silence us. I think this still is the first phase that a new party has to go through, that you do not get media coverage. You do not get to play the game in the same way and the same rules as other actors can do. So you're totally in a shadow system, actually, and we were refused to have campaign ads on buses and almost everywhere in Sweden. They actually let us to have campaign posters in the Stockholm metro, but that's one of the very few places. So yes, they are trying to silence us, and they do not write a lot about this. Even when I met Marine Le Pen, it was totally silent. Nothing was written about it. And the fact that TV4 denied a political party, the only Swexit party to have a political ad, should be big news in the Swedish media. But no one wrote a word about it. It's like you live in a DDR, Soviet Union. No one writes anything about it. It's like it never has happened. And that's obviously the most effective way of tackling Alternative for Sweden, that you try to act in a way that people should think that we do not even exist. Because if people do not even know about our existence, then they cannot seek information about us on the internet, for example, so because they do not know that we exist.
It's not the Russian election meddling, it's the mainstream media election meddling, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole West and Sweden is full of hypocrites, because they are sitting almost every day in the TV studio, and they are saying, yes, Russia will meddle in the election, this will be a threat towards our democracy, and they will have so many people from political parties and from different authorities warning about this situation, but still the ones who are trying to rig the election are Swedish, and they belong in the Swedish media. I mean, it's you can just think what would have happened if a Russian TV channel or Chinese TV channel, or why not a Hungarian TV channel, would allow all parties but not the opposition party to send a political ad. I mean, it would have been big news, and Swedish politicians would have been furious about it. But when it happens in
Yeah.
Sweden, no one cares about it. Not even the Sweden Democrats have said a word
Yeah,
about
well,
us being denied a political ad, because they do not want to give us any attention. So they just keep pretending that nothing has happened.
well, the Swedish politicians, they are constantly up in arms over what's happening in Hungary, saying that Viktor Orban is undemocratic and whatever have you.
Yeah.
But the same thing is, well, worse things are going on in Sweden, and they are completely silent about it. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's again hypocrites, and I do not hear anything about opposition parties or opposition politicians in Hungary being threatened, or even having their houses attacked. But in Sweden, it happens, and we have a very bad situation for opposition parties, where left-wing extremists can use a lot of threats and violence towards opposition parties, and the politicians will not care about it. And we had a situation in the south of Sweden just 2 months ago, where a father who was a candidate for Alternative for Sweden had his door exploded by left-wing extremists who attacked his house during the night and blew out his window and door. And he had 3 kids at home, and it was almost no media coverage about it. So
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, because I saw that story, and I think I was the only one that wrote an article about it in English about what happened. I saw a few stories in Swedish media, but the headlines are pretty interesting. I saw Sydsvenskan had a headline about the attack, and it was it roughly translated, it was bombing connected to far right extremist party.
yeah.
Excuse me. It was actually the far left that they were bombing the so-called far right, well, the conservative party, your conservative party, nationalist party. It was actually far left extremists that were bombing you, but the headline made it sound like it was some kind of connection to your political party that was doing the bombing or something. It's absolutely insane headline. I mean, that's just pure activism. That's not journalism. That is left-wing activism. That's the buddies.
It's crazy. And I mean, the victim here, he who was a member of the Alternative for Sweden, he is the one who gets the blame in some way, and they and this connection to a right-wing extremist party, it sounds as though we would have had someone explode someone's door. I mean, you would instantly think that, okay, Alternative for Sweden blew out someone's door, right-wing extremist Alternative for Sweden, as they usually call us. But we were the ones who were attacked, and you would actually had to go quite long in the article to even find out this. So this is one of many examples on how media is very biased, and they are not even willing to tell the truth. And in many cases, when we have been attacked in different ways, they would not report at all about it. So this was one of many examples, but it has been many times where they do not even write about it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I spoke with him as well, and it was quite a bad attack. They put, I think it was a very illegal, very powerful firework that they put on his door, blew the whole door out, blew the windows out, and he had his kids in there. So the kids could have been injured if they were standing right by the door. They could have been severely injured. I mean, who does this kind of thing?
Yeah,
And
it's insane, and I mean, it's obviously a threat towards democracy if people cannot engage in a party without having the risk of being attacked in their own homes. And this guy, he had his car attacked as well. Just a week before this attack, they damaged his car. So it's the so-called democracy of Sweden, where different oppositional politicians obviously can face this kind of situation. And we are a party who are not allowed to have political ads, as we have spoken about. So I always find it very strange when a country like Sweden and our silly politicians are criticizing other countries for not being democratic. Because if the same thing would have happened in any other country, we would have said that it was a big democratic failure. So
Oh yeah, if this had happened to any of the socialists or anyone else, it would be non-stop in the media. If it was a right winger that had attacked some socialist or something, socialist politician, it would be non-stop in the media everywhere. Not only in Sweden but in the whole world. It would be headlines, you know, far-right extremists bomb the socialists or bomb
and
politicians.
that's why we need
Big threat
media.
and it'll be.
And that's why we need people like you and everyone else who are producing alternative media content, because obviously there's a need for that. You can't really trust big media today. And if media would have been so perfect and so good and so neutral as they claim they are, then why on earth do people feel that they have to go on alternative media sites to find out the truth? Obviously, there's some kind of discrepancy here.
Yeah, well, the thing is, not all people know this, but many journalists they're not journalists, they are left-wing activists. When they were younger, they were part of Antifa, they are buddies with Antifa. I actually saw a report done by a professor here just recently showing that he was doing research on verified journalists on Twitter and their connections with Antifa accounts, and he actually found that a lot of the journalists from Huffington Post, Guardian, they were actually really close with Antifa accounts. They were working with Antifa to even dox people they didn't like. So many of these journalists, they aren't journalists, they are left-wing activists, and that's what more and more people are beginning to see. But not as many. Not as many are seeing it as should be seeing it, but it's definitely more and more seeing this how it works. And that's why alternative media is on the rise, and that's why we see this same journalists writing hit pieces. Did you see this 14-year-old girl Soph on YouTube? She's making edgy political videos, and BuzzFeed wrote a hit piece on her, saying that she is the new face of the far right. It's a moral crisis on YouTube. And after BuzzFeed wrote a hit piece on her, she's been getting threats at school, being harassed. She's just a 14-year-old girl. I mean, come on. These journalists are a bit unhinged at some times.
Yeah, I mean, usually they you think that they should understand, okay, this is gonna, if you have such a bias, then you are creating indeed a situation where this person will have different risks and of being attacked and so on. But I cannot say I'm surprised, and just compare how they really build up this Greta from Sweden, climate Greta. And I'm not going to dig into the details about this political question about climate, but you can just see how she's being used by the media as a savior, and someone proposed her being the new Jesus, and it's been all over. She gets so much attention and positive bias that it's crazy. It's like a sect. It's like a cult where people stop using their own capacity to think. So media is definitely making people stupid, and they are creating some kind of sect behavior. If you have the right opinion, and Greta, she's demonstrating because people have what do you say, climate anxiety, I think, klimatångest. I have climate anxiety, so I just leave school and demonstrate outside parliament. But if you have immigration anxiety because of mass immigration, are you then allowed to leave school and stand outside the parliament when you should have been in school? I do not think that the society today will accept someone who says that I'm anxious that my people is being replaced by immigrants. So that's why I want to demonstrate.
Yeah, I think I saw as well just recently Greta, she was getting a honor PhD doctorate or something from some university as well.
I'm not
It's
surprised.
really interesting to see how, and I have nothing against Greta herself, but as you said, the whole thing around it, the whole just
Yeah,
people are basically, I think I would say there's people, politicians are using her to further their
yeah,
own
yeah.
agenda. That's really sad to see.
Mm.
Um, I have a few more questions here, if that's all right with you
Yeah,
about
sure.
the EU and so on. And by the way, if any of you guys in the chat, we have quite a few viewers right now, so if any of you guys in the chat wants to has a question for Gustav about EU or Sweden or anything, if you use the super chat function, I will read all super chats. So if you have any question, make sure to use that, and we'll try to get to a Q&A later on as well if we have time. So.
Yeah.
All right. Um, so, what is your thoughts on the EU as a whole? Um, do you see it as a globalist project? I mean, or do you think the intentions when they started the EU at first, do you think that was good? Um, or do you think it's always been a plan to kind of get United States of Europe, one country instead of having all of the different nations? They are trying to get a one Europe country, like the United States of America, United States of Europe. Do you think that's been always the plan, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. I think it has, and I'm quite sure that this has always been the idea that we want to create a United States of Europe, a federalist state. But obviously, you cannot do that from nothing. You have to boil the frog. You have to have a slow development all the time in that direction, and that's what they have done. First, they had the European Community, and then they changed that to the European Union. So they kind of changed focus from having free trade to having a political union. So it's been a development for many decades, but obviously the situation was better before. But I think it's always been the idea, and I think that the question of the European Union is I think it's far from dead in Sweden, even though all political parties in parliament now support the European Union. But remember that in 1994 we had 48% who voted against the European Union here in Sweden. 48% voted against it, and that was based on the European Union as it was back in the time. It was 14 countries, not 28. It was nothing about, at least they didn't say anything in the debate about having a big uh, supreme political union which decides our laws. It was all about, yeah, we will have trade and we will have cooperation and we will have peace. But I think that if Swedes would have known what it was going to be, they would have said no. But remember also that we said no to the euro in 2003. So Sweden still has a tradition of being actually quite critical towards the European Union in different ways. So I still think that there's a big opinion in Sweden against European Union. Perhaps not the majority today, but it could be a majority in a few years if we just get the debate alive again. So I do not think that this is a dead question in Sweden. Far from it. So I just think that we need to canalize and use this let's say this silencing of all these people, because they do not have a voice today. All these people who are critical towards the European Union, the parties do not represent them any longer, but they are still there. There's perhaps 40% of the population who wants to get out of the European Union. So obviously that's quite a lot of people.
Yeah, I think I saw a poll recently that majority wants to stay in the EU in Sweden now, but it was I think it's gone that more people want to stay the last few years compared with a few
Yeah,
years back.
it's true that after Brexit, they have managed to scare a lot of people, and
Mm.
some people think that, yeah, there's a lot of chaos with Brexit. Perhaps we shouldn't have a Swexit. But I mean, it's the only voice that you can hear in the public debate. It's anti-Brexit, it's pro-European Union. People have never heard any other voice in the public debate. So obviously this will affect the public opinion toward the European Union. And I'm very sure that if we would get a place in the European Parliament, we would, in a very short time, get the Swexit question to the agenda. Sweden would know about Swexit. We would be able to discuss the problems with the European Union, that the European Union is supreme towards Sweden. European Union has a law system, which means that the laws from the European Union are above laws from Sweden. So I think if people would know about this, then you would see the Swexit opinion increase dramatically. And that's what we're saying in this opinion as well, that vote for Alternative for Sweden, and we will do our very best to get the debate about Swexit back to the agenda. We do not promise to change the European Union because we do not think that it's possible. It's way too big and Sweden is way too small to affect the European Union. But what we can do is what Nigel Farage did for UKIP in the European Parliament. He didn't change the European Union. I mean, no one has been able to do that. Not even David Cameron could do that, and he was still a prime minister.
Yeah.
But Nigel Farage managed to get even more intensity in the question of Brexit. And without him in the European Parliament, perhaps they wouldn't have had a Brexit at this time. So I think it's very important to start with the debate.
Without Farage, I don't think Brexit would have happened in the UK. It's been really important for the whole debate to get what Farage
and I think it's important to emphasize this because some people ask us, but why are you getting into the European Parliament if you want to get out of the EU? But I think that if we do not want to be candidates for this election, then someone else would just have our place, and they would be federalists, and then you will never have a debate about Swexit. So just look at Nigel Farage. He's a very good example on how you can work in this question, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think if you take on the role as Farage in Sweden, then that could do a lot for Sweden and the EU question, getting Sweden out of the EU. That would be a very interesting step to take, indeed.
Yeah.
I think it probably wouldn't, as we've seen with the UK, it takes time. Then it takes 5, 10, 15 years to get the question going, get the ball rolling, and so on, to get the question into people's heads, and it takes time.
It takes time, and perhaps they started already in the 70s or the 80s. And
I think they started in they really kicked off around 2000, I think. UK Farage, like 2000, 2002. That's when they really started to.
I read an interesting book about this. I know that you have more experience from the UK than I do, but I read a book which said that the debate was basically killed in the 80s, and then it slowly came alive in the 90s, and as you say, from year 2000 and onwards, it has just increased dramatically in importance. So exactly. They say basically the same thing as you do, but they in this book he emphasized that it was a time when this wasn't at all a big question in the UK, and when you had to fight really hard to even make people aware and interested about a Brexit question. And perhaps it's a similar situation in Sweden today, that it's all about making people aware that this is indeed a big problem with the European Union.
Do you think that perhaps the conservatives, the right-wingers in Sweden, are preoccupied with the migration question and completely ignoring the EU question because of that?
I think that the center-right and the so-called conservatives in Sweden, if you can call them conservatives, let's say they are center-right or center parties, liberal, right-wing in some way, but they are not really conservatives. But all these parties, the moderates and the Christian Democrats, Center Party and the liberals, they like the European Union. They've always liked the European Union, and there has almost never been any major EU criticism from these parties, from the centre-right parties. Actually, the EU criticism has been much more from the left-wing parties.
Yeah, from the Communist Party.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and they have been actually before having quite good arguments against the EU. And back in the time in the 90s, when we had the referendum, they warned about what's going to happen with democracy if we move the power to Brussels. If you move the power further away from the people with less transparency and less possibilities to get in touch with your politicians and even have some kind of dialogue between the people and politicians. What happens with democracy? I mean, all these things were actually things that the left were right about. I'm sure they were wrong in many ways as well, but I try to emphasize this in my current campaign, that the left had good arguments towards the European Union before, and many of the people who voted for left-wing parties should be betrayed today. They should feel betrayed because also the left-wing parties in Sweden have now abandoned their EU criticism, and they're now pro European Union. So I think it's one of these where the left actually has previously had a better policy than the so-called right wing.
Yeah, isn't that because they thought that the EU was too right wing for their taste?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, it's possibly so that they
see the EU as some kind of American imperialist thing,
Yeah.
or something like that, and that's probably why they
And
didn't
now-
like them.
Yeah, exactly. And now that they found out that it's a big socialist union, they actually support it. Yeah, but you're probably right that the arguments from the left perhaps aren't exactly the same arguments as we use against European Union, but they had some good ideas. So I can just say that the center right-wing parties, they have always been Euro fanatics. They think that everything is better if we let the EU decide. They have very low self-esteem, actually, the center right-wing parties. They are very weak, and I think they see this as a way to tackle the social democrats who have been so powerful in Sweden. So they think that, yeah, maybe we can give away the power to the European Union. But it's just because they have bad self-esteem. They have no self-confidence at all. And I want self-confidence back in Sweden. That's why I want Sweden to get out of the EU, because we can't rely on other people's politicians for our own country. And I think that this is something that you should be able to agree about, whether you're left-wing or right-wing or center or whatever you are. You should be able to agree that independence is so important that it shouldn't really divide us between the different parties. It should be something that unites people, even if we have different opinions in different political questions. Just as the right to independence is much more important than different political questions.
So how would you like to see Sweden go out to the EU? Would you want Sweden to be something like Norway, or?
Yeah, I think Norway has perhaps not the best solution with this EES agreement. It seems as they pay quite a lot to the European Union anyway, and
they don't get
have
any decision power.
Yeah, exactly, no power at all, and they have to follow most of the rules anyway. So I think Switzerland has a much more interesting solution. They are not a part of the EES. They said no to that, and they have bilateral and multilateral agreements with the European Union. So I think that's a very good solution, that you have your own agreements with the Union and with different European countries and countries even outside Europe, obviously. So Switzerland seems to be a good example. I'm sure there are some other examples as well, but if you need to point at any country, Switzerland is interesting. But you should also remember, of course, that Sweden wasn't a part of the European Union before 1995, when we formally entered the European Union. And it worked out quite well for us. Sweden was a much safer and better country at that time. So
You can say that
obviously, that's what.
the rape statistics have gone up dramatically since
Yeah,
then.
yeah, and I was in Malmö today having a public political rally, and Malmö is, as you all know, a city which has tremendous problems, and Swedes are a minority in the city, and it's also the one of the starting points for the whole inflow of drugs and weapons and illegal immigrants in Sweden, since it's so close to the border. So before the European Union, it wasn't at all the same thing. But after we entered the European Union, we have had basically open borders in Europe. We have had the free movement of goods and people. But when you talk about free movement of goods, then it also includes weapons. And when you talk about free movement of people, then it also includes criminals and illegal immigrants and other people that we do not want in this country. So I would say that the real winners from the European Union project are criminals or illegal immigrants. I mean, they are actually the relative winners from this project, because they
Yeah.
have now been able to enter Sweden or any other country without any controls whatsoever. And since 1995, you can just see how crime statistics have been rising in Sweden. The criminality in Sweden today is massive, and it's well organized as well. So obviously, a lot of this criminality comes from foreigners.
And we see a lot of illegal weapons being smuggled in through the EU as well. Hand grenades, AK-47s, things like that, and really cheap as well.
Yeah,
If they had better border controls in Sweden, it would have been much harder for these weapons to get in,
yeah,
I would think,
yeah.
than currently.
That's totally correct. And I think that we need to evaluate our relation with the European Union. And we've been a part of the European Union now for 25 years. The British were part of first the European Community and then the European Union for over 40 years. So they knew what it meant to be a part of it.
Mm.
No one can say that the British has done the wrong decision, because they know exactly what it means, and they obviously can evaluate this after 4 decades. So I think that Sweden should evaluate its membership in the European Union now, and we can easily see what it has meant for us. We are today and this year paying a record fee to the European Union of 40 billion Swedish crowns. 40 billion Swedish crowns is almost the same size as this whole Swedish military. It's even bigger than the whole Swedish legal system, with all policemen included and all the courts and everything related to the legal system. Costs us less than the European Union in one single year. So obviously this is a really high cost, and we should use this money somewhere else in Sweden and invest it in the Swedish people. So
It could
that's
be
another argument.
it could be spent on a lot of more important things, like more police, more hospital places, or things like that. That is desperately understaffed in Sweden now at the moment. Especially the
Yeah,
police force is having major problems dealing with all the new crime going on, and
yeah,
yeah, I think that's something that should be that a lot of Swedes, you would think, would be on board with. You know, stop paying all these billions to the EU and use them to on the welfare a little bit more instead. You know,
yeah,
that's what I did. I was in the UK for the Brexit campaign, and they pushed that really hard. The cost.
yeah.
How much money they would save by leaving. I think it said something like they would save 360 billion pounds or something by leaving the
Mm,
EU, and that was one of their main points, and that really went home with the British people.
yeah.
You would think a lot
And
of Swedish people would.
I think this is really interesting what you're saying, because media has always said that this wasn't serious campaigning by the Brexit side, but I have still not heard any real arguments against this idea that we can take the European Union fee and put it on the welfare system instead. They say that it's not possible, but I am interested in knowing exactly why wouldn't it be possible. When Britain gets out of the European Union, they will no longer pay a European Union fee, which means that these people can easily be put on the British people, on the British welfare system. And obviously, it's the same thing in Sweden. They say that, yeah, but you cannot take the European Union fee and say that you can put everything on the welfare. But yes, it does. I mean, it's very, very simple. It's very easy. So they are constantly lying about this. So I think that the Brexit campaign did exactly the right thing when they had these two things against each other: the European Union fee or the British welfare system. Where do you want the money? Because I think it's actually very, very true what they did.
Yeah, no, I agree very much. And by the way, how much? I have a few more questions. How much time do you have? Do you need to go soon, or?
No, I'm quite available now. It's perhaps half an hour more.
Yeah, sounds good. Perfect.
If people have the energy to keep listening,
Yeah,
I hope so.
we have as many viewers now as we did before, so they're not leaving.
Ah,
That's good.
super.
I have just hang on. Just trying to find a comment here. Yeah, I got a super chat here from Mark G. He says people should associate Swedish identity to your party. What's your thoughts on that?
People should associate Swedish identity to our party. Yeah, I understand the idea. I think to some extent that people feel that we are still the only party, or nowadays the only party who actually stands up for Swedish culture and Swedish identity. And actually, I got into some controversy a few days ago when I was in the hometown of world famous Astrid Lindgren with Pippi Longstockings and Emil and all these characters that are the kind of major examples of Swedish culture.
Classical Swedish.
Yeah, and I said that Astrid Lindgren is a perfect example of the cultural nation that Sweden has been, and I do not think that she would have had the same inspiration to write these different books and stories in today's Sweden when people are being replaced by immigrants. And it was a hell of a controversy in the newspaper where they said that I used Astrid Lindgren for my own purpose. So, but it has been that many times when the Sweden Democrats have said something good about Astrid Lindgren, then there has been big controversy as well. So yes, we try to talk a lot about Swedish identity and culture, but obviously we do not want to make Swedish identity purely a party political question, because I think that Swedish identity and Swedish culture should still be a bit above the political situation and a political party. In the same way that I also would prefer many other very important questions like the European Union to not only be connected to a single political party, even though that's the case today, unfortunately, but I would like it to be more of a supreme question over the political parties. But yes,
It's kind of like that in Norway as well.
yeah.
By the way, I can hear echo for myself. I think your volume is a little high. Or do you have any headphones, perhaps?
I do not have any headphones at the moment. I can try and see if I can find them. Do you still hear echo?
Let me see. Yeah, I can still hear myself echo.
Yeah. Strange that it started just now. I'll see if I can make
It was a bit of echo before in the beginning, but then it went away.
Yeah,
Can you
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And
Yes.
the echo is gone, perfect. And yeah, the sound is better.
Yes.
Your sound quality is better as well, so that's perfect.
Perfect.
Apologies.
Yeah. So I think that Swedish identity and Swedish culture shouldn't be purely connected to political parties, but
you see
yeah,
that
we'll see how it goes in the future.
You see that in Norway with 17 May, 17th of May, Constitution Day celebrations. They have in Norway. Everyone is basically patriotic. Everyone is
Oh, that's super.
Everyone is celebrating freedom and the Constitution. thousands of people turn out. I'm in Norway currently, so I was there this weekend, and it's actually quite interesting to see, because in Norway, I was it's quite refreshing to see, because I was meeting with some people from some youth parties here in Norway, and you had people from the left and from the right, and they were all kind of friends, hanging out, no problem. They were disagreeing, but they were civil about it. That's very refreshing to see. And I think it's the climate is a little bit different in Norway politically compared to many other countries. I think it's going the wrong way, yes, but I think it's a bit different still. So that's really refreshing to see.
Yeah, that's good to hear. It was just a few days ago where Norway had the National Day, right?
Yeah, 17th May.
Yeah, I think that's a very beautiful idea, that patriotism and nationalism can unite people irrespective of their political ideas, or irrespective of whether they live on in cities or on the countryside, or if they're old, and whatever background they have, that nationalism should unite people. It's not about dividing people, it's about uniting people, and obviously also uniting people who vote for different political parties.
Yeah, no, and yeah, no, that's I think that's how it should be. People should be patriotic of their country, no matter what political side they're on. So that's something we've been missing for quite some time in Western politics, I think.
Definitely.
And I just want to get to some questions here as well, if that's okay. We've got the
sure.
question here, and thank you so much, by the way, to Sean for the super chat before. He says, "Keep up the good work, Peter." Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy the stream. We're trying to bring you these interviews that you don't see in the mainstream media. So thank you so much, and glad you enjoy it. I have a question here from Shaba. He says that Canada might break up based on October's election results. Any chance of that happening in Sweden?
Okay, I didn't hear. Canada might
break up based on October's election results coming up. Any chance of that happening in Sweden? So is there any chance of Sweden breaking up from the election results? Like, I'm not sure what he means, but I'm guessing he means politically.
Yeah, like a major political change, or what?
Yeah, I guess that's what he means. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's difficult to say something now. I think the last election was a disappointment for many Swedes who had hoped that there would be a bigger game changer in Swedish politics. Many people had hoped that the Sweden Democrats would be the biggest party, but they were quite far from being the biggest party. So the last election in Sweden was not the game changer that we had hoped. It was actually an election which gave us more of the same. Still, the Sweden Democrats increased, but the political situation in Sweden is basically the same now as it was a few years ago, and the Sweden Democrats are still just the third biggest party. So we obviously must realize that it takes time, and we in Alternative for Sweden, we did a weaker election than we had hoped for. It was the same for the Sweden Democrats, but we must keep fighting. And I do not think that this week's European election will have any dramatic changes. Actually, I do not think it has a major impact on Swedish politics, whether Sweden Democrats makes a good election or not in the European election. The only thing that can actually create a major event in Swedish politics in this election, in the European election, is that Alternative for Sweden would make a good election.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that we have to get a mandate, but if we would make a good election and be on the rise, then it would be a big thing in Sweden, I would say. But that's the only thing that can really shake up things in this election. Whether Sweden Democrats get 15 or 20% doesn't matter at all. So obviously, I hope that we are going to do a good election. How things will be in our next parliamentary election in 2022 is difficult to say now, but I think that that we will probably have many of the current parties who are now trying to be more and more anti-immigration. They will probably be even more anti-immigration. So they are doing this, let's say, repositioning, and however the voters are going to trust them or not is very difficult to say. I think and I hope that voters will realize that they are just lying and they are fake.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. The biggest thing that could happen is if Alternative Sweden gets a lot of traction in this EU election.
Yeah, and
That could
obviously you
really
can
shake
just
things up.
yeah, and if you need even more arguments towards that, then yeah, the Sweden Democrats, they are already in the European Parliament, and no one really cares what they are doing there, because no one knows what they are doing. They are doing nothing to shake up the debate. They are so far away from Nigel Farage or anyone else in that character as you can ever come. I mean, Sweden Democrats are doing nothing in the European Parliament. So they have 2 representatives there now. If they get 3 representatives or even 4 representatives, doesn't matter at all. We can actually achieve more with 0 representatives in the European Parliament than they can
Yeah,
do with 4 representatives.
it's
Because
all
if we
about
have,
getting them. It's all
yeah,
about
it's
changing
all about,
the culture, the conversation.
yeah, definitely.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, what are your thoughts on? Because obviously you think the EU has way too much power over independent nations. What do you think about this Article 13 that the EU recently accepted? So this Article 13 was this copyright directive that they introduced, forcing YouTube to, well, basically getting content creators in a bit of trouble on YouTube. So
Yeah,
in
it's
America right now they have this what's it called, fair use. So you can use clips or photos that I've taken if it's used in a fair way. But now if there's anything that someone else has taken and you don't own the rights to it, then you risk getting your video completely removed from
yeah,
YouTube. So I have to make sure that everything on my videos is owned by me.
yeah.
Otherwise, I might not be allowed to upload my videos. So right now I'm using. I don't know if you can see the stream yourself on the, but I know
No,
my viewers
I
can see it.
cannot.
Yeah, I have a green
Yeah,
screen set up. I have a background picture, and I have you here as well on the screen. I own the rights to all of this now, but if I had used anything that perhaps if I'd used a few seconds of something that wasn't mine, then that could have potentially been trouble. So that's a really bad law for independent
yeah,
creators on the internet. What's your
yeah,
thoughts
yeah.
on that?
Yeah, I agree totally. And the scary thing is that they will have a filter which automatically tracks what you're uploading, and your picture will be caught in this filter
Yeah,
that the social media actors will develop. And obviously it's gonna strengthen the monopoly situation from Facebook or other actors, because they are the only ones who have the capacity to develop such a filter. So
yeah,
it will actually just promote and ease the situation for the already dominant actors. So it will be much more complicated for new disruptive innovations to to disrupt this market, because they might not have the capacity or the cash needed to develop these filters, which
mm,
are very advanced filters.
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I'm
And it's a
very
threat, and
negative
it's a threat
towards
for free speech as well. I mean,
a threat
people.
for free speech, obviously. And I think that this whole idea to regulate or forbidding people to upload a picture, then it goes against the whole idea with the internet and social media, and
Yeah,
you cannot control, or you shouldn't try to control social media and the internet in this way, because you have to accept that this is the way things work. And if you try to control the internet, then we're on some kind of modern Soviet Union state. It's not realistic, and it's very dangerous because you're trying to turn back the time to some place where the internet didn't even exist, and I
Yeah.
think it's
So do you
in yeah, I must just say it's in a much bigger situation. You can see it as a way that they are trying to control the public debate in newspapers and wherever we're going to have a discussion, and now they're trying to control the internet in many ways because they know that this discussion has moved into the internet from the public debate, which is controlled by big media.
Yeah.
And now the internet is also going to be controlled by the establishment.
Yeah, I think you're completely correct. They want to control the narrative because it went from the mainstream. Back 15 years ago, it was the mainstream media controlling the narrative, but as I shifted over to the internet, now people are controlling the narrative instead. Independent people like me, people like other independent journalists. There's a lot of good people. Tim Pool, many good examples of good journalists out there, and they are trying to regain control. I think is one way to put it.
And it's not only about Article 13. It's about this idea that you should censor so-called hate speech. And hate speech means usually people who dare to criticize the current agenda. So they're gonna censor us for what we're writing on Facebook and other social media platforms as well. So it's a tendency in the Western world to control the internet. And again, the Western world complains about China or wherever, but you have censorship going on in the Western world. But Article 13 also is one of my main arguments as to why Sweden is no longer sovereign, because actually Swedish parliamentarians in the European Parliament voted against Article 13. But we still have to introduce this law in Sweden because the European Union decided about it, and the fact that Sweden said no doesn't mean that we do not have to introduce this law. So I usually take it as an example on how strange it is that even when we do not want this law in Sweden, we have to introduce it. Then I do not think that we're sovereign anymore. So
yeah, because that's how it works in Brussels. One country can vote against it, but the rest of the countries in the parliament votes for it, and well, tough luck. You have to go with it.
And it was interesting because there were a few countries who were against Article 13, and obviously a few countries who were for Article 13. And in the end, it was Germany who decided, because Germany is a big country with a lot of influence in the European Union. So depending on what Germany decided, they had the balance of power in this question. Depending on what Germany decided, we would know if we got this law in Sweden or not. So it means that the control of Swedish laws were in the hands of Germany all of a sudden. So I have nothing against Germans. I love Germany. I've studied in Germany and I speak
it's funny
German, but I do not want them to decide our laws, especially not German politicians.
It's funny, I've leftists, they're always against Nazis and all this stuff, but then they are completely fine with Germany controlling Swedish laws. That's completely fine. That's
it's because Germany has supported their liberal agenda for many years now, so perhaps that's why.
Yeah, it's just funny to see. And by the way, thank you to Jackie for the super chats. It's a brilliant channel, Peter. Thank you so much. Glad you enjoyed this stream. It seems like a lot of people are really enjoying this stream today, so that's very good. And thank you so much to all. A guy from Norway is watching as well. Donated a super chat as well. Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed the stream as well. The Canadian person has another comment I just want to read as well, if that's fine. It says that so Shaba with the super chat says the Western provinces will separate if Trudeau wins again. I don't know anything about that, but so that was apparently what. So I think that was what he was referring to with Canada and elections.
Interesting. I have not followed this discussion. I was first wondering whether it was actually a breakup in the way I first thought that he meant, and it turned out to be exactly that. But I have not followed this, and I cannot estimate how likely it is that Canada will break up in different countries. I have not heard much about that, so it would be interesting to read about it. I do not think Sweden will do that. I think Sweden will keep having its current borders. There's not really any independence movement anywhere in Sweden, not even in Malmö, which is now controlled by...
Skåne maybe is a little bit more, I don't know.
Yeah, they have a little bit, and of course some of the Skåne people likes Denmark a lot. I do as well, but I do not really think there's any serious independence movement here, and not even by the Muslims. So far, they have not really demanded that Sweden or their own areas in Sweden would be part of any other country. Rather, they are trying to infiltrate the country and trying to strengthen their position in Sweden, and relying on the Swedish state, which gives them benefits in different ways. So they are trying to use the Swedish state for their own purpose, and they are doing it effectively. So I currently cannot see that Sweden's borders will change. Rather, we would just keep having this situation where our country is being more and more divided within, and we will more and more different nationalities living.
We're getting the no-go zones, the ghettos, and all of the division from within happening in Sweden.
Within the Swedish borders, definitely.
Yeah. I have a question from Mark here, who sent a super chat as well. Thank you so much, Mark, for that. He has a question here. Have you thought about contacting similar political parties in other countries in Europe to cooperate? I don't know if you watched earlier on the stream, but I think Gustav was talking a bit about that. He had been meeting with Marine Le Pen and nationalists in Europe, correct?
Yes, I met Marine Le Pen a few days ago, and I met many other parties there as well. Estonians, Danish people, and Finns. Lega was there as well, from Italy. And Lega also spoke for us last year in Stockholm. So I'm truly a European in that sense, that I love European cooperation. I love the different cultures of Europe and our differences. I think Europe is fascinating continent. So I really like this European cooperation, and that's also why I'm against the European Union, because I do not think it's a good European cooperation. So I hope to be able to invite more European parties to Sweden and Stockholm, and I hope to be able to go to different European countries to visit them, definitely.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think it's important to have cooperation with other parties, so that's really good to hear.
Totally agree.
But which brings up to a question I had actually. I think we're starting to run out of time now, I think. So I had a question about that, actually, just about this very thing. So would you like to see an alternative to the EU with kind of patriots working together for a stronger Europe? You know, perhaps with yourself, Le Pen, Salvini, Poland, Viktor Orban working kind of an alternative to the EU. Is that something you would like to see?
Yeah, it depends what you mean with alternative. I do not believe in a new union. I think that since Europe is not a country, we must avoid any organizations which makes Europe more similar to a country or a state, because that's totally opposite of what I think Europe should be. So I would like a very good cooperation between different European countries and different European parties. I think that a lot of this cooperation can be done on a voluntary basis with multilateral agreements. Just look at the Nordic cooperation. The Nordic countries have been very strong historically, that throughout the world, the Nordics and the Nordic countries and Scandinavia is perhaps even more known than the different countries themselves. At least when you go to Asia, they have a hard time to say the difference between different Nordic countries, but they know that the Nordic countries exist.
We look quite similar.
Yeah, we are similar, and they are aware that this region, the Nordic countries, has been very successful historically, and it all was possible even though we didn't even have a Nordic political union, at least not in modern times. The Nordic cooperation was always on a voluntary basis, and we didn't have any supranational Nordic parliament. We didn't have any Nordic president. We didn't have any Nordic union, nothing. But still, we had one of the most advanced and successful corporations that any region in the world has had. So I think the same thing is possible with Europe as well, that we can have a very strong European cooperation also without Brussels. Perhaps we're going to be even stronger if we do not have to go to Brussels the whole time that we're going to talk with each other. Perhaps it's better that if we can cooperate directly with each other instead of having this monster of bureaucracy in Brussels where everyone should gather in the corridors of the European Union institutions. So I think it's wrong to say that the cooperation needs a union. I think it can be free, actually. So at least today, I do not think we should see it as an alternative to European Union.
Yeah, no, so just it's not a union, but just voluntary political cooperation between
Yeah,
European
definitely,
countries. Yeah,
definitely, and it's one of the problems today that almost all of the European cooperation has been put into Brussels, and with Brussels comes a lot of problems. You have the lobbyists, you have the bureaucrats, you have the lack of transparency. But if you instead could have a political exchange between the countries, then you would actually be stronger. And
yeah.
I mean, what was the last time when you heard about the big European meeting which didn't take place in Brussels? It was quite, I mean, I cannot even remember it. And it means that Brussels absorbs almost all the cooperation that could happen between the nation states.
Yeah.
And just look at the Nordic cooperation that I mentioned. That cooperation was successful, but it has deteriorated because the Nordic prime ministers, they do not meet with themselves, and they do not meet to discuss Nordic questions. They always have to go to Brussels, and they perhaps can talk with each other in a coffee break. But that's not real cooperation. If Sweden and Finland and Denmark and Norway have to go to Brussels to be able to talk with each other in a coffee break, I mean, that's not a source of good cooperation, I think.
Seems like a good waste of money as well.
Yeah, a really good waste of money. I mean,
really bad for the environment. And really bad for the environment. Whereas we need Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, but it's strange how the climate people, the climate activists, are always pro EU. But why on earth are they pro a union where the European Parliament moves every month between Strasbourg and Brussels? And obviously it's hundreds, if not thousands, of trucks that they will have to drive for hours and hours, and they will have to move everything, and they will have double apartments. I mean, it's a carousel
exactly.
which is massive, but they do not care about this. So I think it's it's a very good example on how these climate activists have been brainwashed to support the European Union in every example and every way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And before we finish off here, can I just have a question here from a person in the chat here, if that's fine with you?
Yep.
From a super chat here from Assunta Madonni. I'm assuming perhaps Italian, I'm not sure. Says, why does the left not care about crime and violence? So I assume she means in Sweden, why the left doesn't care about the crime and violence increasing in Sweden. What's your thoughts on that?
Good question. I think they deny that it has risen. Some of the left-wing comedians even say that Sweden is safer than it has ever been before, which is of course nonsense. It was much safer in the 50s or the 60s, or any time before this
Anytime before now, basically.
Yeah, any time before now. I think even yesterday was safer than today, actually. But obviously, you do not feel the difference day to day. But we're going on a path where Sweden gets more and more unsafe every day. Yes, even this night, people were shot in Malmo, where we had our meeting. But people were shot in this city. But it's everyday business now. No one really
Yeah.
cares about it, and it's small news in the media because it happens all the time. These shootings in Malmo, so no one cares really. At least people are being used to it.
Well, it's turning out to bombings now instead. They're using bombs instead of guns now, more and more
Yeah,
it seems.
bombs and grenades, and yeah, guns are nothing new actually.
Yeah.
But why do they not care about it? I think because this is their own project. I mean, the world that we're living in now and the societies that we're having are the societies that have been constructed by left-wing ideas. 50 years ago, or 51 years ago, in 1968, with the demonstrations, it marked the start of left-wing dominance in the West. And if you evaluate what they have created, then they have created a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unsafe societies where people do not feel safe anymore. And this liberal idea that we can let everyone in our country, it has created unsafe countries, unsafe societies. It has created societies where women are not able to walk the streets at all. So I think that since they know that this is a problem created by them, they are not willing to talk about it. That's probably why. And it's the same thing why they don't want to talk about immigration problems, because it's a problem created by the left wing. They do not want to talk about the lack of democracy because it has been created by left wing dominance in the media and the establishment. So the left wing obviously do not want to talk about problems that they have created and problems that they are responsible for. So they try to silence it.
Exactly, and I think you're spot on there. They have their policies are behind much of the problems we see now. It's been going on for many years, 20, 30, 40 years. And
Yeah.
we're now seeing the result of it, and they don't want to take responsibility, basically. Like,
Yeah.
the left never wants to take responsibility.
Yeah.
It's never real communism. It's never real socialism. It's never...
Yeah.
It's supposed to work fine, so let's just
Yeah.
ignore it when it doesn't work. Let's just ignore it.
Yeah, let's try it again.
Yeah,
Next time it
exactly.
will work for sure.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, I thought we have been going now for quite a while here, so I think maybe we should start wrapping this up. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you all who wanted to listen to me again. It was great being in this channel last year, and I'm happy to have a little bit of a comeback during this election.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a really interesting and good discussion, and I can definitely see that the viewers in the chat have really enjoyed this stream today, for sure.
Ah, super. And I can just say that if you live in Sweden or any other European country, make sure to go and vote now in the European election and vote for a patriotic and EU critical party. I'm sure you can find some of these parties in your countries. They do not have to be perfect, but at least do not stay at home, because it's better to just go and vote on a real EU critic politician or party instead of staying at home. It doesn't really have any effect to stay at home and complain, because politicians do not listen to people who stay at home. Politicians listen to people who protest actively, and voting in this election is one way of protesting towards the current development. So I just want to recommend everyone to actually go and vote on Sunday, or if you have the election some day before. I know that there's different days for this election in Europe.
Yeah, and if people in Sweden want to vote for your party, where can I find you?
We have our campaign site at utur.eu, but you should go to the different election rooms, and there you can find our ballots where you can use the Alternative for Sweden ballot. So
So your
If you
ballots
do not,
your ballots will be in the ballot boxes at the places, or?
yeah, in most of them, we have a very complicated system in Sweden where we have to hand out the ballots all over Sweden, and we might not be able to do that exactly everywhere. So if you do not find our party ballot, you should just take a blank ballot with no text, and you just write alternative for Sweden in Swedish, alternativ för Sverige,
So, yeah.
as it says. No abbreviation, just write it straight out, alternativ för Sverige, on a blank ballot, and the vote will count just as much as a vote with the traditional party ballot. So make sure to go and vote.
Yeah, excellent. And Willet, by the way, wonders if you need voting card, röstkort, to vote.
No, if you go to a pre-election facility or pre-election stand, förtidsröstningslokal in Swedish, then you do not need your voting card. It's enough to just bring the ID, any ID, just like a passport or driver's license, and they will accept your vote anyway.
Yeah.
So if you go to a förtidsröstningslokal, then you can skip the röstkort. I think it's the same on the election day as well, that you do not need this röstkort if you go to your stated röstningslokal, the facility where you're supposed to vote.
Yeah, no, excellent.
But if you vote somewhere outside your own city, it's probably more safe to bring this voting card.
Okay, yeah, no, excellent. So everyone who's in Sweden, make sure to go out and vote on Sunday on election on the EU elections. And it's Sunday, correct?
It's Sunday in Sweden. I know that Britain has it on Thursday, I think, in 2 days, or is it perhaps Friday? But in Sweden it's on Sunday. But make sure to go and vote already now if you want to do that.
Yes.
I mean, you do not have to wait.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, so make sure to go out and vote if you're everyone should go out and vote, in my opinion, in the election. So if you're in Sweden, make sure you go out and vote. So you get so you can kind of, especially, here's just one thing I want to say, especially if you are discontent with Article 13, make sure to protest against that. I know there's a lot of young people upset about Article 13, so make sure you go out and vote if you don't like Article 13. You maybe sit home, you don't know, is it worth voting? Well, at least because of Article 13, go out there and do a protest vote at least. So make sure to go out and vote. And if you want to vote for Alternative for Sweden, I'll have the link to your website below as well, so they can find information there. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone who listened to this discussion. I hope that you got some answers on your questions, and I hope to be able to participate again sometime.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we'll have you on again later. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a real pleasure talking with you, and having all you viewers out there. Make sure to hit the like button on this video. That gives this video more views. It's all about the algorithms. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to my channel as well, and hit notification bell so you don't miss important videos like this, and share this video on social media, on your Facebook, on your Twitter, so that more people can see this, because you won't see this interview won't be broadcast on the mainstream media. So make sure you share this so people get more information, more knowledge about the elections. That's always a good thing. So thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you at the next stream. I will be having a stream on in a couple of days, so make sure you don't miss that, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, guys, and good night.